20 minutes of doing something is much more important than 20 hours of thinking about doing something.
Welcome to the Soom Podcast, where we share stories, insights, and tools to help you live a happier life.
Hello, everyone. I'm Soom. And today I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Celina Lee, to talk about how to overcome struggles and find your own happiness. Celina is a globally recognized executive and career coach, lawyer, award-winning writer, and podcast host for Live Your Dream with Celina Lee. She is the founder of Give One Dream, a global movement that inspires people to pursue and achieve their dreams. She has also been invited to speak at various events and organizations such as TEDx, Google, MIT, Stanford, and Princeton. And Celina is my dear friend that I admire, and she also helped me find my path. Hi, Celina. How are you?
Hi, Soom. So good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining today. Today, we're gonna talk about how to overcome struggles and find your own happiness. And you are the first person that popped out on my mind when I was brainstorming this topic. You're always smiling. You always look so happy. I'm sure everyone can see it as well right now. And I remember when I first met you about 8 years ago, I remember thinking to myself, wow, she's shining. I gotta get to know her and find out what her secret is. I don't think I've ever asked you this question, Celina. What makes you happy? Let me ask you this first. Are you happy?
Yes, I am very happy, but I think finding what makes you happy is a journey in itself. And I've actually thought a lot about this topic too. And, a lot of people say, I want to do XYZ so I can be happy, whether that's go to good school, get a good job, make a lot of money, or whatever it may be. And it took me quite some time to really figure out what really makes me happy and then how to actually make it happen.
Then if you can define happiness in one sentence, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really tough thing to answer. But for me, how I define happiness and success would be pretty similar. It is to be able to utilize my gifts and talents to be able to serve people. And ultimately, that makes me very happy. And then if I'm able to do that, I feel like that I've achieved my own versions of success as well.
Oh, I like that. It's beautiful. And I think the opposite of happiness might be struggles. And have you had any major struggles in life?
Of course. Wow. Where do I begin? Everybody has their own struggles, right?
Yeah.
I think when I look back on my life, basically the whole theme was getting past the no's. A lot of people said I can't do it because of whatever it may be, my background, my race, my cultural background, where I come from. And every time I tried to do something, I was told a no, or people said you can't do that. I was born and raised in California as a baby, and then I moved to Korea when I was about 3-4 years old. So I actually didn't learn English until I was about at the end of 7th grade is when my family moved back to Southern California. So as a teenager, a middle school student, I started learning English for the first time in my life. And back then, Korea was not a very cool country like it is now. There was really no understanding or even interest in people to really understand, to really even ask you questions about Korea. I got a lot of, are you Japanese or Chinese? And things like that. So there was a lot of bullying. It's hard to be a 7th grader in any country, but to be from a different culture or background, didn't speak the language, it was probably one of the hardest times of my life. I also had this dream of going to a good school, good college, but because I was going to a very just normal public high school, not a very fancy, prestigious private high school. And actually, my high school was in a very bad school district. So everybody said that I couldn't go to a good college. Actually, there's a funny story behind this. I got bullied so much when I was in middle school that my parents actually ended up moving to another school district so I could have a fresh start as a high school student. Yeah, because actually when I was in middle school, the school district was a really pretty good one, and I was set to go to a really good high school. But then, I got bullied a lot, and I didn't want my high school experience to be with all the kids who actually knew my past. So by then, hopefully I had learned enough English to, be able to go to classes and all that. But then I didn't want to be around those kids who were bullying me all the time. So my parents actually moved to another area, actually a town next to it. And then I was able to go to a brand new high school where nobody really knew me. But that high school was in a really bad school district. So it was so bad that a lot of parents would change their address and pretend that they actually live in the other school district where I had originally come from. That's how bad the school was. Because everybody said, yeah, if you go to high school here, you'll never get into college. So, but I had this big dream and ended up going to MIT. So, things worked out. But I think basically my whole life was all about trying to achieve a seemingly impossible dream. And also the same thing when I was trying to pursue my childhood dream of writing a book. I wanted to get the book published in Korea, and write it in Korean. But a lot of people said, who do you think you are to write a book? My mom actually said this, right? And she said, nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to care. Only famous, successful people write books. Who do you think you are? And that also was, very hurtful. But I think somehow I have this dream or the motivation to prove other people wrong when I really want to do something. So that, and even when I know we're going to talk about this soon, but even when I was changing my career, I started my career as an investment banker, and then I became a lawyer. And I really didn't feel like that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, to review contracts to help rich people become richer. It was really not very meaningful to me. And I did a lot of exploration, changing careers and transitioning to a lot of different industries. And then eventually I found my calling as a coach, as an executive and career coach. And even that transition was super tough. And a lot of people said that, that's never going to happen. What is coaching and things like that. So, but I still made it happen. So I guess my whole life theme was, still believing myself and believing in the impossible dream and fighting against everybody's no's, and then still making it happen.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Then were there any critical moments that led you to make those decisions from investment banker to corporate lawyer, and then, corporate lawyer to career coach? Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in college, I thought about applying to law school right away. But somehow life has its own twists and turns, and I got an opportunity to work at an investment bank. And back then it was the hottest industry where everybody wanted to work in. Yeah. So I did that, but I just didn't really feel like me. You know how when you're wearing clothes that makes you feel really uncomfortable, you just feel right, you feel really comfortable. And it looks good on you, right? And that somehow, now I understand that I was very uncomfortable in those jobs, investment banking and also corporate law. I ended up going to a law school because I was already interested in applying anyway. And then because I had already had finance experience, it was easy to get a corporate law job at big law firms. And even though, I was grateful for the opportunities, I really didn't feel like it really was me in terms of the work that I did. I'm a hardworking person, so I have no problem working hard and long hours. But the nature of the work, really, I just didn't feel like there was a lot of meaning in it. I was a private equity lawyer, so my work involved reviewing a lot of contracts to help rich people become richer. And I just didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. I saw my partners, the law firm partners that I worked for, who were my bosses at the time, and I'm still good friends with them and really respect them. But I saw their life, and they were in their 60s and still doing the same thing. They've been doing it for about 30 years. And I just didn't want to be that person to be in my 60s and doing the same thing for 30 years. I'm also a very curious person, and I love exploring, and I love traveling. I love meeting new people. I just have really this, unstoppable curiosity to learn about the world and to meet people. But as a corporate lawyer working at a big law firm in New York City, you really don't have time. And so So
You
there was
have
no
to work
freedom.
nonstop, day and night.
Exactly. And there
Yeah.
really was no freedom. So I thought about like, what is it about this job that I really don't enjoy so much? It's that the nature of the work, I didn't really find it to be meaningful. I worked incredibly hard all my life. And I thought that was the ultimate goal, to move to New York, to work at a big law firm as an attorney. But when I achieved that goal, I felt like I won the race, but I was in the wrong race. And how is it possible that I did everything right I thought I was supposed to? And I, did all the right things, go to good school, get a good job, work hard, right? And then my life just felt so wrong. So that's when I really had to really think about, okay, well, how do I do things differently from now on? So that way I don't make the same mistake. So it's ironic because these are the same questions that I should have asked myself earlier. Like, what do I want? Who do I want to become? What do I care about? What do I not care about? What's important to me, not what's not important to me? What do I find to be meaningful? What do I not find to be meaningful? All of those really important questions, I really didn't have an opportunity to ask myself earlier when I was younger, when I was trying to decide the direction of my life. I think what ended up happening was I ended up following the societal formula for success, which was different from my own versions of success. And then I became the person who worked really hard and achieved all her goals, but in the end, didn't even know what she wants anymore. So that was probably one of the toughest moments of my life as well.
Thank you for sharing. Then, how did you know it was the right path for you? Is there a way to find out whether it is the right choice or not? Because, a lot of people have difficulty in figuring out whether a certain path is right for them, or, a lot of us don't even know what we actually want or like. So, is there a way to find out?
Yeah, sure. I often describe or when I try to explain this question, a good analogy would be going shopping or dating, right? So when you are trying to find the type of clothes or a style that looks good on you, because everyone's different, right? Probably want to try on clothes. Like you sit there and think really hard all day about what kind of clothes would look good on you. That probably isn't a very useful time.
Right.
Probably go shopping and try some clothes. Like, oh, I thought I would look good on that. And no, I don't. And oh, this one actually, looks better on me, right? Same thing with dating, right? You don't just marry the guy you meet on a first date and hope for the best, right? You go on lots of dates and then you learn about yourself. You figure out what you want and what you don't want, right? I think same thing should happen in career planning and career exploration. But actually, how many of us actually know exactly what we're getting ourselves into before we start a job, right? Virtually, I would say very small fraction of people actually know that, right? I didn't know what being a lawyer, corporate lawyer is involved, like what that it really is until I became one, right?
Yeah.
So I think society is actually not designed in such a way where we are encouraged to experiment and to really try things out, right? So we have to design our own experiments. So if you're at a juncture in your life where you are trying to figure out the next step and you really don't know, I would invite you to just try a lot of different things, right? Whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be some huge, crazy thing, but give yourself permission to just try new different things, even if it has nothing to do or seems like has nothing to do with your future career possibilities. I think what happens is that a lot of us talk ourselves out of trying things before we even start. We say, oh, that's never going to make money. How could I do that? I don't have any experience in that. There's so many people who are doing that. I can't throw away, 10 plus years of my career in law or finance or whatever it may be. So there's so much talking in your head. So there's overthinking and underacting, and that is deadly for career planning. So I would invite you to just try a lot of different things. And that's what really changed my life. I decided that I'm going to start giving myself permission to try different things, whatever it may be. It may be something really small or you think find to be interesting, and then actually give yourself permission to do that. I think a big mistake that I made early in my career was that even if I had some interest in something, I would always talk myself out of it by thinking, well, how is it going to help me get into a better school or help me get a better job? And then I wouldn't do it, right? So if you never try anything, you're never going to learn. You're never going to know what you like and don't like. And you're going to be someone like me who doesn't even know what she wants months after working so hard, right? So that's when I really changed my, I guess, strategy. And I decided that I'm going to give myself permission to try different things, have new experiences. And that's how I ended up writing my book and then starting my podcast. And then eventually all of that helped me to understand when I'm the happiest and when I find the most joy and meaning is when I work with people and when I help people really share their stories. So whenever I was doing something that involved people and stories, I saw myself being very happy. There was a very distinct pattern. And that's when I knew that, wow, I got to really go full in on coaching because I think that's what I'm really meant to do.
Oh, that's amazing. It really resonates with me, especially, a lot of us overthink and, we don't really execute it. And we're just thinking and like, oh, is it going to work? Maybe not. And we just give up easily. And the
Right.
secret is, we have to start executing.
Yeah, exactly. And starting
Yeah.
is the hardest part because
Yeah.
there was a quote that one of my clients sent me. And I always emphasize to her, stop overthinking and underacting, right? You need
Right.
to bias towards action, always take more action than spend time thinking about something. And she sent me this quote, which she said reminded me to her. It's something like 20 minutes of doing something is much more important than 20 hours of thinking about doing something. Right.
Right. Yeah. Thinking about
So
doing something. Yeah.
thinking about it. And some of us, not 20 hours, but 200 hours or sometimes
Right.
20 years,
Or 20 years. Yeah.
Exactly. And that I've seen that, and a lot of times the information you think that you need comes from taking action too. So
Mm.
I would encourage you to try a lot of different things, give yourself full permission to experiment, explore. You need to design your own career experiments because, like I said before, it is in nobody's interest to show you the full picture of what the job really entails
Right.
because it's not going to be all pretty, right?
Right.
So you need to gain as much information about what the job is really like before you commit to it. So, and then, while you're in that exploration phase, you might end up discovering something that you never thought you would like. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah. I think that's why life is so interesting. You never know, right? Where you
Exactly.
will be. So,
That's right.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that. And I want to go back and talk about your book. You mentioned that, you heard a lot of no's from people when you decided to write a book. And can you share more about that?
Oh, sure. Wow. We may not have enough time to cover everything. So the book that I wrote, as I shared earlier, it's in Korean. I published it in Korea.
Mm.
And I got more rejections trying to write this book than I had ever been until that point in my life.
Oh.
And because it was an interview book, I was at the time really trying to decide or figure out the direction of my life and my career. But I felt like I didn't really have any guidance. There was really nobody who could give me a blueprint to a happy career, right?
Mm.
And at the time, had a small talk show for a cable television in New York City. And through that, I got to meet a lot of different people, interview a lot of different people. And I found that to be really enjoyable. And one of my very early childhood dream was to have a book with my name on it. And I decided that will be the topic. I'm going to interview successful Korean Americans about, how they really figured out what they wanted to do with their life. This was the biggest question then I had then and also now. And so that became the topic. Well, because it's an interview book, I need people to interview before I could write the book, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, I was not a writer. I was an aspiring writer, but I was not a writer yet. Nobody really knew me. I didn't really have any following or anything like that. I've never really written anything, so I couldn't even show anybody a blog. I basically had no credentials or qualifications to prove to anyone that I was qualified to do this, to write a book, right? So I got more rejections trying to write this book than I'd ever been until that point in my life. And I would email, people and call them and nobody would call me back. And I remember feeling kind of hurt. And one day I was really thinking about, why am I getting rejected here? Well, it's because I'm trying to take action to achieve my childhood dream, which was to write a book.
Mhm.
But because I was doing that, I'm getting rejected. If I wasn't doing anything, nobody would have reason to reject me. So if you actually think about it, the rejections is the evidence that I am taking action towards my goals and dreams. So it's actually something to celebrate, not to be ashamed of or not to feel bad about. So when I was able to reframe rejection in this way, it was incredibly liberating. So I really didn't care about the no's because I knew that statistically, if you take a lot of action, yes, a lot of times you'll get a no, but statistically, some of that will be a yes. And with those few yeses, you could go write a book or start a podcast or start, your project or start a company, whatever it may be. You actually don't need a lot of yeses to change the course of your life. You just need a few. But to get to the few, you need to take a lot of action and then to be able to be okay with the no. And something that I do now is, this because we talked about this before, is something called the rejection challenge, where I do it I always do it myself and also have all my clients do it. This is part of the weekly assignment, is to go for the rejection, try to collect as many rejections as you can. And then over time, you're going to build up a rejection muscle. In the beginning, you're going to try for little things, maybe if you're the type of person where you're afraid of hearing the no, that you wouldn't even ask for it anyway, start with small things, right? Whatever it may be. And then eventually, once you build up enough rejection muscle where you actually are not really bothered by it anymore, then you can go for bigger rejection challenge to change your career, to change your life, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's rejection challenge is the idea that I learned while writing my book.
Yeah, I remember the rejection challenge. At first, I was kind of hesitant and I was worried, like, oh my God, what if they say no? And then after trying several times, I just got used to it and I was not afraid anymore. So yeah, it was really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. People are so afraid of getting their emotions hurt. So a lot of people prioritize imagining their emotions getting hurt. It hasn't even happened yet, right? So they didn't go for it yet. So it hasn't happened yet, but they're imagining how hurt they would be if the people say no, that they don't even go for it. So what's the result of that? They self-reject themselves. They don't even give themselves the chance to be rejected. And statistically, if you don't ask for anything, you're never going to get anything, right? And another thing that I've learned is that when people say no to you, it's usually not a no never, it's a no not right now. But if you're so afraid of asking again, then it's really going to be a permanent no because you're never going to be given another chance again, right? And another thing that I learned is that when people say no to you, it rarely has anything to do with us. It almost has everything to do with them. They're either busy or traveling or they, I don't know, they're full like in their calendar or whatever it may be.
Or maybe they just don't want to share their stories.
Exactly.
They're private.
They're private, whatever it may be. So don't take it personally and don't take it as a permanent no. And when you start to celebrate you as this resilient person who's able to hear a no and try again, that's, I think, how you really become a person who you can be proud of. Nowadays, I think about, when's the last time I got rejected? And if I can't think of anything in the last month or two, I'm like, oh, wow, that's a real failure because I'm staying small. That means I'm not taking enough action, right? And when I'm really proud of myself these days is, of course, if I do something and there's some kind of an external recognition, that's great. But when I'm really proud of myself is that, I hear no or I got rejected on something. Of course, it's a bummer. That would have been a really good opportunity. But after 5 minutes, I already moved on to another rejection challenge. And when I see myself able to do that, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And I think that's when your self-esteem grows, because when you are able to see yourself do the hard thing and do it anyway, even though you may be feeling a little bit bummed out or feeling a little hurt, you can go very far in your life because a lot of people are self-rejecting themselves because they're so afraid. So there's really not much competition once you're able to figure this out.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So then other than the rejection challenges, are there any other practices or methods that you usually do to kind of overcome any challenges?
Yeah, well, there's many. And something that I learned the hard way throughout my life was that I was always kind of chasing chasing success and happiness, but I was really never able to really define what that was for myself. So I actually learned this from one of my guests on my podcast. Michael Kim is a very famous lawyer, and we recorded a conversation with the title called How to Make Yourself Happy. And that episode went kind of viral. I think it was the topic that resonated with a lot of people. And
Yeah, I really liked that episode. Yeah.
Yes, I remember you listening to it and we talked about it.
Yeah.
And he said that a lot of people know that to work hard, I mean, to get promotion or to succeed in your job or school or get good grades or whatever, for your grades to improve or to get a promotion, that you have to work hard, right? But people don't really understand that to be happy, you also have to work at it too. Like people just think that somehow if I really work hard, someone's going to figure out how to make myself happy and give it to me later. It doesn't work like that. So he's an incredibly busy person. He has law firms all over the world, but he every day, 20 to 30 minutes every day, he thinks about, okay, well, what makes me happy? And then actually make time to do it. So it starts with small little things, right? And so along that line, I have designed what's called a love coaching framework. And it's just a 4-step coaching process. So first step is called learning about yourself through your values and your emotions, paying attention to how you feel, right? And that's, I think, what Michael was referring to in terms of really learning what makes you happy. He said that the first step towards being happy is to know when you're happy, because everyone's different, right? So I have my clients do what's called the daily love reflections and then answer questions based on those 4 steps. So the first step is like, how did you feel today? And what did that tell you about what's important to you? So when you're able to kind of pay attention to your emotion in a way where you're like a third-party observer, you're not really wrapped around your emotions, you're observing your emotion as if someone else is watching you, that creates some distance and you can become more objective. Oh, I'm a person. When XYZ happens, I'm very happy. Oh, I'm a person. When ABC situation happens, I'm very unhappy. You learn about yourself, right? And then so then you're able to make decisions and take action to do more of what makes you happy and to do less of what makes you unhappy. So it's actually, we can learn about ourselves just by paying attention to our emotions, right? So that's what I do. I think about, okay, what if I'm really feeling bad? Well, what really happened there? Oh, I'm a person. When these things happen, I'm really unhappy, right? And also really being able to be kind to yourself is, I think, really important, because I think my whole life I was very brutal to myself. I thought that the only way for me to motivate myself was to to be harsh, to criticize myself, to really make myself work harder. But at the end of the day, I've learned that if I really keep up with that habit of criticizing myself, then I'm never going to be happy, because I never feel like I'm enough. So I've been learning a lot more about self-compassion, to be kind to myself, not like, be okay with being lazy all the time, but understanding that I need to take care of myself or be kind to myself as I would be to one of my dear friends. And because you spend more time with yourself than anybody else, right? So if you're berating yourself the whole day, you can never get away from yourself, right? So that's pretty tough. So I've been trying to be a bit more compassionate to myself, to be a little bit empathetic, to really not judge myself, when I'm feeling bad. I think a lot of times when, let's say you feel bad about something and then you feel worse because you judge yourself for feeling bad. Oh, I shouldn't feel that way. Or, oh my God, why do I feel that way? Like I'm such a bad person for feeling that way. Or it was already hard for you to feel that emotion. But on top of that, you add a layer of judgment and you criticize yourself for feeling that way. It's a never ending cycle that doesn't end well, right? So you acknowledge yourself. Oh yeah, I remember I felt bad about that, but that's okay. It's not to feel that way. It's called acknowledge and validate in coaching. So try to implement in my own life. And that has really significantly increased my happiness.
That's great. I remember doing the love reflection. It was extremely helpful. It kind of made me pay attention to my feelings every day.
Yeah, exactly. So in case the listeners want to know what the rest of the steps are. So the first step was learn about yourself, always overcome internal obstacles. So it's like the fear of rejections and the failures that we talked about, how to peacefully coexist with your inner negative voice, which we all have. And V stands for visualize your success. So being able to paint a picture of the life you want to live. And then finally, E is explore your curiosities and take action. So paying attention to curiosities, what your interests are, and then to be able to take action. So those are the first steps. And I'm really glad that you found it to be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm here pleasure doing this podcast.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to ask you, are you currently working on any exciting projects or events coming up that you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So we're recording a conversation relatively early in January. I'm actually going to Dubai end of
Ah,
this month. I got invited to speak at a festival. So that's really exciting. And then I'll be spending, then I'll back to New York City. And then after that, I go to Paris to spend about a month, hopefully. I haven't planned out all the
your
details just yet.
favorite place.
Yeah, well, so this is the funniest, fun story. But back when I was a lawyer working at a big law firm in New York City, one of the things that I felt like I didn't really enjoy about the experience was that I didn't have freedom, right? And I really, had a set amount of vacation days, and I had to go to office every day. And I felt like I'm a very curious person, but I don't have the freedom or the time to explore the world. And I decided that it was a dream at the time. I thought one day I'm going to do what I love anywhere in the world. I just believed that was going to happen. But at the time, it was such a far-fetched dream that it seemed virtually impossible. Like it was an impossible dream, right? Seemingly impossible dream. But I just kept thinking about one day I'm going to be able to do what I love anywhere in the world. And I thought about if I were to do that, where would I go? And I thought I'm going to go to Paris and I'm going to eat my croissant and drink my coffee and then be able to work out on my laptop,
Oh, I
whatever
love
I was
that.
doing. Yeah. And
In a
so,
cute cafe.
yeah, exactly. The cute cafe, right?
Yeah.
And so that was always the dream. And for whatever reason, it was like I just always envisioned. So this was part of my visualization practice as for part of my love coaching framework that I did myself. And so I'm going to go to Paris and then make it happen. So that's really exciting. And then another fun thing I'm working on is I'm actually preparing to launch a YouTube show. Of course, I have a
That's
podcast show, right?
exciting.
Yeah. And then for years and years, a lot of people were like, oh, you should do YouTube. But I was very afraid of video. So this is also my version of overcoming internal obstacles. I don't know. I just preferred audio. I have no problem talking to people, audio, but with video, I don't know. I just, as a woman, you care a lot about what other people think about you and, and like that, right? So
I know I'm like that too.
right? We all are, right? And I just didn't really, I felt very vulnerable. So I didn't want to, but I've heard from so many people over the years that I should start a YouTube show. And that's how I would be able to reach more people because not everybody listens to a podcast, right? So I'm preparing for that. So it took me a long time. And actually, it wasn't easy for me to get started, but now I'm going to start hopefully soon. So happy to share the link once it launches.
Yes, definitely. How can we connect with you and learn more about what you do? I think it'll be great to share with our
Yes.
subscribers.
Thank you for asking. So the best way is through my website. So celinalee.co is my website. And there you'll see the links to all my social platforms. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So look forward to connecting and also keeping in touch and sharing my stories with more audience. So
That's great. And your YouTube channel will be updated there as well.
Yeah, updated. It's not there yet, but it'll be there yet. And also
Okay.
on my website, you'll be able to check out my podcast. It's called Celina Lee, Live Your Dream with Celina Lee. So that's already on all the major podcast players. So you're welcome to check it out too.
Awesome. And lastly, what final piece of advice would you like to share with our subscribers?
Yeah, there's a lot that I wish I could share, but if I could share one advice is that, especially because I know your audience is looking to make a career change, is that don't let one job or title define you. You can be more than one thing. I think this was a mistake that I made myself. The title or the identity as a lawyer was so strong for me that it took me a lot longer to have the courage to make the jump. And I thought, when you go to receptions or those networking events and conferences, that question, oh, what's your name and what do you do, right? And I was afraid that somehow if I'm I'm no longer affiliated with those bigger firms, law firm, investment banks, that somehow I wouldn't be legit or people wouldn't respect me. And if you think about it, that's actually a very cowardly thing to do. And because there's really nothing that lasts forever, right? Because jobs can change, people can leave, right? I think I was very insecure. So I was trying to protect myself under the big umbrellas of what I thought those big firms could provide for me, right? So if I go to an event and say, I'm Celina Lee from Merrill Lynch or Ropes and Gray, like no more questions to ask because people know what that is, right? But I thought somehow if I don't have that job title or are not part of some big company, somehow I wouldn't be legit. And I learned the hard way, actually, the complete opposite is true. When I go to, in the same way that we met, right? Like when I go to events or conferences or, networking sessions and things like that, because I am so excited about what I do and I'm like obsessed with it to a point of obsession, that's literally all I think about. Even when I'm not actually coaching or speaking, everything that I pay attention to, the books that I'm reading or the things that I'm watching are all about how do I help people become the best version of themselves. That's all I think about and read about and hear about and watch. So I'm just naturally interested in the topic and I really can't believe this is my job and I get paid to do it, right? So I can't talk about it. I can't stop talking about it. And then people really see that energy, I think, in the same way that you did when we met, right?
I definitely saw that.
And people like me better. And I don't have those titles or fancy affiliations anymore. So what I learned was how people see you has a lot less to do with your job title than how you see yourself and how you feel about what you do. So you have to really cultivate that relationship, positive, good relationship with yourself where you really take care of yourself, right? And then to know that you can be more than one thing. I'm a lawyer. I'm still a licensed lawyer. I don't really want to do it anymore, but I could if I want to, right? But I'm also a coach. I'm an executive and career coach. I'm also a writer. I'm a podcast hoster and hopefully a YouTuber and a speaker. Who knows? Maybe in the future, I'll try something else, right? You can be all of that and much more. Not ever let one job title define you. You can be more than one thing. And then once you are able to do that with yourself, then I think it can be more liberating. And then that will help you to hopefully have a courage to try something else, because just because you're not doing something anymore or you make a career transition, what you did before is not wasted. It is part of you. It will always be part of you, right? So I think I've seen that this is what really holds people back. So give yourself full permission to try different things, to be more than one thing. I mean, isn't that much more interesting? I mean, we've got only one life to live, right?
And life is short.
Your life is short. And so try it. So a lot of times we are standing in our own way of living the life that we want. So I hope that you can really be honest with yourself and then to not confuse what you want with what you think you should want. Everybody, is like so obsessed with what I should want, or I should be a lawyer, even though I don't like it because my parents, like that, or I should make as much money as my classmates, or I should do this, I should live in this area, whatever it may be. I think we spent a lot more time thinking about and then to making decisions to make other people have a better, to make sure that we live a life that other people think is good. You're not living your life. You're living somebody else's life, or to please people that you don't even care about, right? So to think about is like what you want versus what you think you should want. And then to really be honest about what is that you really want and to make sure all of your decisions and actions reflect that.
We have to listen to our inner voice.
Yes, listen to your inner voice. And then I've had so many experiences in my life when I really got very honest with myself and to follow my intuition. It always served me really well. This is back when I was trying. A lot of people ask me this question, like, how did you know when to leave, right? And for a while, I was trying to do both, be a lawyer and also be a coach too. And then it came to a point where I had to decide. I had a lot more experience and credentials as a lawyer than I did as a coach, right? I just finished coaching school and I was trying to, do it on the side, but I was incredibly busy, right? And even though it was an unknown path, I had very little, credibility. Whereas as a lawyer, I've been at it for quite some time, right? And I remember I was walking a lot. I have this habit of walking a lot when I need to think. And I walked into this cafe in Soho in New York City. And I just remember I kind of heard a voice, or it was an intuition, just said, gotta go try this thing out. Otherwise, Otherwise, you may regret it for the rest of your life. And it just felt like I had to try it. Otherwise, I may look back and wish that I had, right? So I said, the voice said, you got to leave, you got to make the jump. And so that's when I left. And it was incredibly scary at the time, but I kept believing that it would work out. And I let all of my fears fuel me to take more action. And then here I am. I am living my dream life. So it is definitely possible.
I love that. It's so inspiring. And I'm sure our subscribers will feel the same. Thank you so much for joining today. We learned so much from you. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Soom. I'm so excited to see you launch your podcast and inspiring so many people around the world. So thank you for letting me be part of your journey.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave us a review on the iTunes and Spotify. That's the best way to support us and help us reach more listeners like you. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button if you didn't already. Also, to stay up to date, please subscribe to my newsletter on soom.substack.com. Okay, that's it. See you next time.